Hello, everyone. This is Nimish Patel. I'm the partner and head of MSK's corporate securities practice, as well as the co-chairman of our firm. As part of our Wellness Wherever series, I'm joined today by Dr. Jeff Spencer, who is a former Olympic cyclist and a high performance coach. He has worked with some of the biggest names in sports and business and is here today to give us some thoughts on how people can push through the sticking points during these times of COVID. Jeff believes that while many of us are sheltering in place, we can actually use this moment to liberate ourselves rather than succumbing to feeling confined and map out a better vision for our future selves. So let's dive right in. Jeff, given the broad range of people you work with over the years, from champion athletes to household name executives to even military leaders, do you think there's a common thread between all of them?
Yes, there's a common thread that runs through all of them is that they have a gold medal mentality, meaning that they always strive to achieve the best. And so therefore, they're never in a hurry to win the silver medal, kind of meaning like, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Let's make sure that we've got everything assembled in front of us that starts with making sure that they have the correct goal, the right goal. There's lots of smart goals, but they'd rather have the right goal to follow to make sure that we have the materials and supplies. Let's make sure that we have a great team to support us, knowing that no one wins alone. You got to have a great team that has great leadership. Let's make sure that we have the inventory of supplies and materials that are necessary. And let's make sure that we have a roadmap so that when we venture into the jungle, we know exactly where we are, we know where we're headed, but we also know what we should anticipate in terms of potential problems to avoid them, and then what the potential opportunities are so that we're in a place to be able to capitalize them.
Some of the people you've coached, Tiger Woods, Richard Branson, you two, someone sitting at home listening to this might be inclined to say, well, these people, they're huge names with huge responsibilities. So I don't see how I can relate to their journey to mine. What would you say to that person if they're sitting in front of you?
Well, quite honestly, we all started at the same place. We were born, we had a mind that was available for some, curation and insight and growth and nurturing. And we all have an inspiration meter within us that has certain aspirations to achieve certain things. So certainly that's a common phenomena that we all share. And the truth be known is that whether you're baking a cake or whether you're on a moonshot or you're going to colonize Mars, it always follows the exact same process. And we adopted our daughter from Colombia at the age of 10, like 11 years ago. We taught her how to bake a cake by using the same model that I've used actually helping an athlete becoming an Olympian this particular year. So that never changes. I think that one thing we need to be mindful of is that when we look at the mentality or the mindset that we have is that we come into the goal achievement domain, step into that arena, and we all have a little voice that sits on our shoulder that tells us certain things. And the things that little voice tells us aren't always of ultimate encouragement, and they're usually of a detracting nature. And one of the things that little voice tells us is that, you can't do this. Like my daughter, nobody in her family ever graduated from elementary school, and here she is right now, going to be a senior in college, this coming year. So I think we need to be really mindful about the stories that we tell us or those things that arise in our mind that set us up for something that's not real. The truth is that the path to get from where we are to where we want to go always is the same. You do the preparation, make sure you do the homework, and then you actively pursue the goal. And there's actually 5 steps in each of those that history has revealed that if we follow this path, then we'll get to where we want to go. And as long as we have the right goal, that's not too big for ourselves, but it's appropriate that we can reach with our current skill level, then we start to develop the skills and the confidence that we can move on from smaller goals to medium-sized goals to bigger goals, then on to colonizing Mars. And that's the mythology that I think that we just always need to be mindful of. We all start at the same place. We all follow the same path. We make sure we don't get ahead of ourselves. We learn the skill of goal achievement, and then we start to build from medium to larger size goals. That's how it's done.
Right. Well, congratulations to your daughter for
Oh, thank you.
breaking those barriers.
Thanks. Biggest
But
achievement ever.
speaking of those little voices that are sitting on your shoulder from time to time, I think many of our listeners are juggling on so many different priorities right now, from kids schooling at home to work responsibilities to perhaps even aging and health challenged parents. COVID has hit people differently, but many I speak to all seem to have one thing in common, which is overwhelmed and wanting this to be over, almost to the point of a depressive state. How do
Hmm.
you develop a champion mindset when most folks are just trying to get through the day in our new normal with so much uncertainty surrounding us?
Boy, that's a great question. I think the most important thing to be mindful in this situation is I get it why we would want it to be normal again. And that's a process that time will reveal to us that we can look back on and we'll figure out what that is. But I think a key thing here is to make sure that when we talk about overwhelm, this is kind of the genesis and the nature of this, is that if we look at the COVID situation, when we were kind of humming along pre-COVID, we had 3.5 unemployment, unprecedented. The stock market was hovering around 30,000, which again was absolutely unheard of. And we had high optimism and exuberant expectations for an expansion and a bigger future. And we were all outside. We had tremendous mobility to do whatever we want, whenever we wanted. We had the ability to make a variety of different choices because the choices were really unlimited. We had at our disposal virtually nothing in our way. And you kind of look at that formatting maybe 4 or 5 months ago. I mean, that's what our life was like. Everything was green. It was a green light on everything. And then all of a sudden, the COVID showed up in red, bold, 96-point type. And then what did COVID do? I mean, COVID then sent us indoors. It walled us off from people. It stripped away everything that was familiar to us. We started to get very cautious. Unemployment went to like 14.5%. Stock market, crashed 32% to 1900, and the expansion then became, like sheer panic. So that was essentially ripping the carpet out from under us. Everything that we knew, that we grew up with, that we thought to be true, that our expectations were built on, that we invested a lot in, suddenly all of a sudden got stripped away, completely stripped away. We were bared with nothing, and we had no insight into what an unprecedented future even looked like. Could we even imagine what this is? And so when we kind of put all those factors together, it creates a very difficult picture because it does put us on hyper overwhelm. And the problem with hyper overwhelm is that we generally try to get back what we had too quickly because we're afraid if we don't get back to it, then it's never going to come back. Life will be changed for the worse permanently. So we try to scramble and get things back too quick. You see this in Las Vegas where the guy loses some money, then he wants to go all in just to get back what he had. And then what happens is that he loses everything because he started to panic and he became irrational. And so we can see that possibility where there are people that are overreacting to everything based upon their perception of what it is and what it will be. And we don't have enough information to know what that is yet. We just know that things have changed to some degree. We don't know to the extent at which it's permanent or whether it's temporary. We have no idea. And then on the other side of that, faced with this completely turning our expectations for life and what we presume to be true and the lens that we looked at life through for the length of our lives up to this point, people then get deer in the headlights syndrome where they start to lock up. They can't think. And then when we lock up and we can't think, it's kind of carries the same challenge as trying to catch up and get back what you had too quickly. Because if we do nothing, then opportunities can pass us by, which, for sure we don't want. So when we look at this idea of wanting to get back to normal and feeling overwhelmed by that, the fear of an unknown future that we can't possibly understand right now, puts us in that state of being. And the challenge with that is that it's very destructive because it makes us preoccupied. We're not available for people. the hormone cascade that happens starts to then etch our health. It can lead to, health issues. It starts to alienate ourselves from team because we're doing and saying and showing up in different ways that kind of scare our teammates because they don't know how to interpret what's going on there. So there's uh, a number of things that we need to be mindful of. So in this situation like this, the very most important thing to do is to just stay in the game. And what I mean by that is you just want to stay in the game. You want to hold ground. You don't want to try to gain it or gain it all back or try to get the advantage by doing more. You don't want to sit there and wait because then you're going to start to backslide. So truly the name of the game is to stay in the game. And then as information starts to come back and we have more visibility, then we can start to adjust things based upon reality, not our fear-based presumption of something that's not even here yet, knowing that 90% of all the things that we fear never happen anyway. So it's a very difficult place that we need to find ourselves in. And the thing that I will say about this is that the most important characteristic and trait that we need, like right now, is courage. And that's the courage to maybe do less and show restraint while we're letting things clarify themselves than the human nature desire to try to get things back too quick and then end up stumbling and getting in our own way trying to do that. So that's the way that I see this, and certainly we can discuss some of the ways that we can do this, but in terms of setting the stage for this, you have to stay in the game in a responsible way where you show up as a person that people continue to trust so that at least relationships can be held in place where people are working together to maintain some semblance of stability while we're looking to find out where the boat is sailing to. And we just don't have enough information at this time to do it. So that's the way that I see it without giving specifics.
Thank you, Jeff. Interesting you use the word hyper overwhelmed. It's a
Yeah.
very profound two words when you put them together. But based on that, do you have suggestions of how people can carve up time in their day and more importantly, get that physical and mental space they need to do the work on themselves that will help them take control?
Again, just great questions. I think the first thing, if we kind of go back to this idea that, part of our human nature has two mentalities. It's got one fear-based mentality, like the little voice that's trying to talk us into things or out of things. And it usually doesn't take us down a path to better. It usually puts us in a place where things become more difficult. But then we have kind of our champion's nature that does want to make sense out of things in a progressive way where we're not biting off, too much too fast. So the real key in this situation right here is to understand that exercise, recreation, and pause is not a discretionary activity. Those are essential and they are mandatory. And the reason why they're mandatory is that the things that we do in terms of exercise, diet, good cheer with people that nourish and enrich our soul, is that it acts as stabilizers. That comes in and creates a level of reality and is a partition between us and that part of our mind that wants to catastrophize about everything. And if we don't give ourselves that space because we don't purposely put time in our calendar to do those things, then we set ourselves up for health-related challenges and getting sick. Our immunity drops, so our vulnerability to viral infection dramatically increases. So in my mind, and the advice that I'm giving with the executives that I work with, the business owners that I work with, the people that I know as friends, is that this has to be looked at as a mandatory part of your daily schedule. This is not optional. Your human nature will tell you it's optional. It will tell you you're being lazy. If you were serious about this, you'd actually spend more time looking for a path out and devoting time to that. That's kind of another, myth that just drives us deeper into despair. It reduces our immunity even further. So that's the way that I would suggest this, and I would do it in small increments regularly. Don't wait until you have to do it where you're in overload to then take the pause. take the pause before you need it. That way it doesn't need to be as long as a pause, and you'll be able to maintain your ability to perform indefinitely over the long term. And why that's important is that when we know that we're proactively giving ourselves pause to regenerate our body and mind, that we're going to be able to show up and do what we have to do to move forward. And with that knowing, it gives us self-confidence. So then our anxiety drops, and then our leadership capacity with our family and our friends and in business is held at a premium.
Well, thank you. My anxiety has dropped just listening to you, and now I understand why
Oh, that's great.
people do need coaches in their life. Everything that you're saying is good advice, things you would tell an athlete, but things that an executive should just be reminded from time to time. Finally, Jeff, just how do you do it? How do you, as a professional coach to others, how do you find your own motivation that keeps you going during times like this?
My motivation is quite simple, is that I believe that everybody should have a chance in life to manifest their talents and create a life of value and a legacy of contribution. And that's not something that you can just make up casually. There's a process like behind that. And there's two personal sides to this, is that I did come from a welfare family, but our family became a welfare family when my dad, as a genius, succumbed to alcoholism, which was his best solution, for his life. And unfortunately, we kind of lost him at the age of 13 for myself. And his legacy and his contribution to humanity, the headlines will read something like this: he didn't deliver on the promise of his talent. And I would never want to look at that as being the final line that was written about me in my scorecard for life. I want to make sure that if I have anything to say about it, that everybody has a chance to follow a method and proven ideas that history has shown us to be true. And I'll also say that goal achievement to me is life's essential primal skill, because to the extent at which we can achieve our goals, we can manifest our dreams. Dreams without skill to execute and plan, we can never manifest that which is our potential. And me, that's my calling. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm still in the game. That's why we adopted our daughter when I was 58. Most people are retired at my age, but I wasn't. I was just getting back into the game. So at 58, I had a 10-year-old daughter that didn't speak English. We didn't speak Spanish. She didn't have any school. She had a parasitic-ridden body. She had PTSD and ADHD from physical and mental abuse. And so I took that on at 58. And now, why would I do that? Well, because I had a calling to do it. And I feel that, our job is to create a life of value and contribution. And that's why I, remain in the game. And in my motivation, I just will not accept the answer that people will not have a chance to become the best that they can be and showcase that. And why is that important? To me, it's important because there's only one of us in all of creation, and there's only one of us and the 7 billion people on this planet like right now. And I believe our distinction does matter. And I do believe that we are honor bound to develop our talents, to showcase them for three reasons. Number one is that when we develop our talents and we manifest those things that we can potentially do, we're really honoring our pass through this dimension. That's how we say thanks to this opportunity. When we succeed, we're saying thank you to our mentors, those people that gave of themselves unconditionally without any expectation of anything in return. We say thank you to our family that brought us into this creation. We say thank you to our friends that are always there, our benefactors that maybe gave us an opportunity, maybe gave us a little financial support. That's a way of thanking them. But I would certainly say that the most important reason why coming from our best and creating the best life possible is that it shows other people what their lives can be. And it's a living, breathing example of that. It's just not some other motivational book that we read, but it's actually something that we could look at as a case study that we could follow. And that's why I'm still in the game. And that's why I get up every day, because I want to make sure that I am doing my part in showing people what it takes to get to where they want to go in a responsible way, because I do know that there's always room at the top for the best. And that's why I do what I do, and that's my motivation.
That's beautiful, Jeff. The tragedy with your father, how you've been able to turn that into something so positive, starting with first your daughter, and then all the other executives that you are now inspiring and mentoring from that. So I
Thank
thank you
you.
for your time. Thank you for sharing your observations with us, and we'll wish you all safe and healthy COVID shelter at home. Thanks, everyone.
See you next time. Bye.